everyone, Fertility Journals here. I hope that you're keeping warm this fall season and getting ready for the holidays, in particular Thanksgiving. We are so excited to be celebrating our first Thanksgiving with our baby boy Simba. If you were new, thank you for watching. We hope that you will be able to join our family. Please subscribe if you enjoy content like this. I know when I was going through my 12 IVF cycles, I relied heavily in the YouTube community to be able to gain information, inspiration, and education. And I know for a fact that my success is because of exactly that. I did make a promise to God that if He was to show me favor in my journey, whatever the path that He would lead me to, that I would be a part of the conversations in this space. So I hope that you walk away, even if it's just a little bit of a tip, a little bit of a motivation as you watch this video. And of course, again, if you can subscribe or like, I can continue to make content like this. Thanks for watching. Today, we're gonna talk about something that I didn't really have conflict with it, but I do know that other people do have conflict when it comes to pursuing IVF and being Christian or being of a spiritual background, whatever your religion may be, whatever your beliefs may be, and really just feeling nervous about it. It is actually very real, coming from a very conservative culture in Africa, for example. I can definitely relate to how IVF might be perceived, particularly if you haven't really done the research or don't understand it. And even if you do, you're conflicted with it. I didn't see a lot of conversations about that. So I thought today I would just hop on here and be able to share with you a little bit about how I was able to seek a resolve, because being Christian as well, obviously, I also have those feelings. So if you are interested, stay tuned. The first issue in IVF that is a cause of conflict for a lot of us with our religious beliefs is the issue and the hearing of excess embryos. I will speak about this because this is the biggest one. Based on my diagnosis, diminished ovarian reserve, high FSH, a very low AMH, I was a poor responder, perimenopausal. I really did not have to worry about excess embryos, but that was obviously before I knew exactly what my situation and my diagnosis was. So for those of you who are new, my diagnosis and those of others who have similar diagnosis, we never have to worry about excess embryos necessarily, because we just produce an egg at a time in terms of maturity. But I do want to let you know, if you are contemplating IVF and you have infertility and you are younger, your egg reserve might be plentiful, and the chances of IVF working might be pretty high for you. Obviously, I'm not saying that it's a guarantee, but there have been cases of individuals with infertility who have had excess embryos. Excess healthy embryos. You retrieve these embryos, eggs, I apologize, they fertilize with your partner or husband, significant other, donor, and then you probably do PGTA testing to find out which one you could transfer back. But overall, they are healthy embryos, so you know that their chances of success are high. I will be honest that this is a problem in IVF that is not talked about often. I stumbled into it actually by accident when I was looking and researching about my diagnosis. And it is a blessing, but obviously if, let's say, you have 8 embryos, all of them are male, and you were thinking about having 3 children, then what are you going to do with the 5 other male embryos you have, right? So before I started, before I knew that this was not going to be an issue for me, my husband and I discussed it. And what we had then decided to do, if this situation happened to us, was we were going to consider embryo donation. Embryo donation is a gift. I will actually insert a video that I watched about embryo donation. It is a pathway to having a baby, and it is very cost effective. It costs only a couple $1,000s. And for those who are thinking or closer to the pathway of adoption, but really want to have the experience of having a pregnancy and maybe have male-related infertility and cannot do donor egg,
then embryo donation is a gift. And so the excess embryos are used in the embryo donation process. So the family in that case would give their embryo to another family. And the good news is you get to actually see the family that will be able to have your embryo, and it's usually a couple going through infertility. And as you can see in the video I'm going to attach below, it is such a joy, especially for couples who are financially strapped and are wanting to have that experience of carrying a pregnancy and connecting with a baby. Like I said, life has changed now where there are multiple ways to baby. It's not just jumping straight to adoption. There are different pathways, and that is a pathway that has worked for some. I'll actually share two stories. One of them is the story that I was able to stumble upon when I was just kind of exploring this whole area of infertility. And the other one is actually interesting. It was a Caucasian American couple that actually pursued embryo donation with African American children. And they have two beautiful African American children. An African American family had excess embryos, and they were able to donate them to this family. And so you'll be able to kind of see that. It's such a blessing and a gift. And so the way that I see it, and you'll see in this video, is the joy that these women going through infertility feel, and men, to have the chance to carry a pregnancy and birth a baby is such a blessing. And so if you are a spiritual person and you're worried about excess embryos, then this is definitely something that you can think about if you're worried about that. The second cause of conflict when it comes to spirituality, religion with IVF is the whole thing of science versus God. And I know I've had conversations with people who say that, these reproductive endocrinologists are taking over God, it's playing God. And I get it, because especially coming in from an African background where IVF is so alien in many ways, and having to explain it to family members and people to understand. The way that I look at it, and maybe this can help you kind of breach this subject with others as well, is that God made the universe, God made the earth. And in order for even the IVF lab to exist, in order for those reproductive endocrinologists to exist, then God has to be present. And right now where we are, God is whole, complete, and perfect. So it is no accident that science has evolved and these doctors are continuously evolving. In fact, for me, the science of IVF is a proof that God exists, because to see the cycle of life start from the M baby, my 4BA embryo my baby boy was a 4BA embryo. And I saw him right from when the egg was retrieved from my body, when my husband and I were able to, the fertilization process in the lab, when I got the report, I saw him grow into a morula, grow into a day 5. It took a little bit to test. I saw it. It was just there. And that is how life is formed. And just because you get to see it through the miracle of science doesn't mean that God's hand isn't there. IVF is a journey of hope and faith. And you have to have hope and faith in the miracle of these doctors that have been called into your life to give a chance to give you this blessing. God is in control, and He will determine and He will decide. But I truly believe that these doctors are called. And that's why sometimes you have a good relationship with your doctors, and you can know the doctors that are called to this work, the miracle baby doctors. I think my doctor, Dr. Frank Healing, is called, because I could feel my heart when he looked at me and said, let's try. And he looked at me and said, I think I'll be able to get you your own genetic child. And I remember it was just the way that he said it, based on looking at the data, my history, just looking at it all, and my determination. I felt so much hope in that moment. And that hope, that faith, is what carries you through. And so something definitely for you guys to think about. The next issue when it comes to religion and IVF is that whole conversations about PGTA testing. There's a lot of people who get very conflicted with that. I think a lot of it is, again, based out of not knowing the science, and it seems too good to be true, right? It seems too good to be true to be able to conduct a test that will let you know that the chances of you carrying this pregnancy are high and that it has a 95% chance, like in the case for us. And the science was able to tell us that this was an embryo that would lead to a miscarriage because of the chromosomal makeup, had no chance of life, for example. You guys saw that one of the most, in my opinion, successful IVF cycles that kept us going was the first successful one in our eyes. It was a failure, but a success because we're able to go through every single step of it. And for the first time, I was able to see everything through to fruition. And even though the PGTA test came back letting us know that this is probably not the best one to transfer because it might lead to miscarriage and possibly a DNC. If it grows beyond a certain time, unfortunately, you have to undergo surgery. It's such a risk to take, and the science was able to let us see that. So that's how I look at it again. It's the gift and the calling that these biologists have in the embryo lab, if that's their background, the science background, mostly biology, to be able to really take us to this point where we can see that. That's God's hand, I believe. It is God's hand. There's also another conflict because some people pursue PGTA for gender balancing. You'll notice I do have a video on gender balancing that you can look. A lot of people look down on it, like if it's God's will for you to have multiple boys, multiple girls, then you want to go with it. And I do believe that in some sense. But again, if the science can help you gender balance, what's wrong if you wanted 2 boys and then a girl? What if you had 2 girls and you just wanted a boy? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. All they do is they do sperm sorting. They find the sperm that are more likely to give a boy or girl, which is the first step. Then they infuse those with the eggs to be able to give the family the gender that they're looking for. It's not 100% guaranteed, but it's using science. That's why God gave us this science. That's why, it's the same thing just like medicine. If you have a headache and you take Excedrin, in addition to praying, it's okay, right? So I truly believe that, these conflicts, especially in this day and age, and as I do this video, it's 2022. I think it's exciting and I think it's God-given. And I thank God every day that we have these doctors who honor their calling by trying to figure out a way out for those of us who are struggling with infertility and maybe some other issues as well. So something for you guys to think about. The other conflict often talked about in IVF, guys, is PGD testing. Obviously, the difference between PGTA and PGD is that PGD is when you have a family history of a certain type of disease that can impact you negatively. Like what I learned about PGD was there was a woman who was going through IVF. I think I'll link that video so that you guys can see it. And she had a genetic abnormality. So every time they had the baby would live to be 1 year of age, and then they would pass on. It was really difficult. And so through IVF, they were able to use PGD testing to be able to identify an embryo that was free of that genetic condition. Again, it's the science that allows individuals to be able to do that. And I see nothing wrong with families that are probably trying to figure out a way, especially in such a devastating circumstance like that. So, and I still think PGD is hard because people are like, where do you draw the line? There might be people out there who feel that their beliefs warrant them to birth the children and just continue on. And I respect that. I can see the conflict there as well. But I also, again, heavily do look at this science as God-given. God has given us a science that we could use to enrich our lives and make it better. Particularly, I think, in African communities, which is my background, talking about, for example, the modern way of life and modern medicine versus traditional medicine, and how, using medications to heal certain conditions is okay, even though it goes against African beliefs. I strongly believe, again, that the world evolves. And so I can only share from that experience and how I've educated African members of my community about how the science can really, really help. And maybe you can do the same.
But obviously, based on different cultures, perspectives, religious beliefs, I can see how the PGDD in particular can still be a predicament. All right, folks, I think those were probably the main conversations around religious, spiritual beliefs in IVF. But I do also want to share with you the current policy in the United States when it comes to pursuing IVF that will probably give you a peace of mind if you're conflicted. In the United States, you can only pursue IVF with the embryo up to the 5th day. So they really can't grow the baby in the lab, but they can grow it to the 5th day. Sometimes it makes it to the 6th or 7th in some cases, I've heard, but the FDA does limit the ability to do that. In the United States as well, the current policy does not permit 3-parent babies. This was actually an option that my husband and I were open to because it was very important for my genetics to be a part of the baby. So when I heard about the 3-parent baby, mitochondrial DNA, Dr. Zhang in New York City has done some active work with it. Unfortunately, it was stopped in the United States, but this is actually carried on in other countries. And there are 3-parent babies out there as well. Let me know if you want to know more about that. I'll definitely can do a video into what I discovered about having the genetics of the donor, yourself, and your partner, husband, or significant other. So that is not allowed in the United States. So there you have it. I hope that this video was helpful, guys, in helping you resolve religion, spiritual beliefs, and IVF. Let me know what your conflicts are, how you resolve them. I think this is the start of many conversations to come. Thank you so much for watching. Until my next video. Bye-bye.